AnimeFest, and welcome to the Castle of Horror podcast. Tonight, I am your special host, Mr. Drew Edwards, the writer and creator of the long-running indie comic Halloween Man and its spin-off, Lucy Chaplin Science Starlet, and the winner of the Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle. I am filling in for Jason Henderson, who normally hosts. Unfortunately could not make it tonight, but I am proud, and I hope I will make him proud. So I'm going to let the rest of my co-hosts introduce them. And in fact, we have a newbie to the castle on the end here, so I'm excited to see how this plays out. Take it away.
Oh, I'm not the newbie, but hello, this is Jamie Bahr, lead singer and upright bassist for Danger Cakes, the all-female rockabilly riot girl soul band out of Austin, Texas, as well as the executive director of Girls Rock Austin, a nonprofit for girls, trans, and non-binary youth to be empowered through music education, cross-generational mentorship, and performance.
Very cool. And I'm David Bowles. I am a professor and author and translator from the Rio Grande Valley down in deep South Texas. I am the award-winning author of books such as The Smoking Mirror, Feathered Serpent, Dark Heart of Sky, They Call Me Güero, and my upcoming graphic novels, The Halfling King and Clockwork Curandera, are coming out next year.
So now our Castle of Horror virgin, so to speak.
Yeah, I am the noob. My name is Kevin Garcia. I am a professional comic book historian, having worked for Marvel Comics as part of their official handbook of the Marvel Universe. I'm also a high school teacher, and I've taught literature for about 14 years and journalism as well, having been a professional reporter for many years before becoming a teacher. I am new to the Castle of Horror, but I am definitely a fan of horror, and especially the stranger side of cinema.
Well, speaking of the stranger side of cinema, tonight's film is a crossover between the Ring and the Grudge franchise. It is a 2016 Japanese horror film. It is, and I'm going to probably butcher this, so I will let David correct me when I don't say this right, Sadako versus Kayako.
Not Sadako.
So how do you say this right?
It's Sadako versus Kayako.
Well, bless my cracker heart for not being able to say that. I am a victim of the Texas education system, folks.
Hey, I represent that remark.
He's a teacher.
I represent that
I will say about this film, though, that everybody who I've told about this has said that exists, and my response is, it exists.
So, to that point, we are going to get everybody's opening thoughts on this, on the Ring versus the Grudge, as it is known in America. So starting with Jamie and working our way down to Kevin, and then we will circle back to moi. Let's get everybody's thoughts on the Ring versus the Grudge.
You know, it's funny. I didn't expect much from this movie, and I was delightfully surprised by the amount of just everything, all of the extra that is just in this movie. You know, I thought happy ending was coming, and I thought wrong.
Spoilers.
Because everybody, yeah, spoilers.
No, it's okay.
Duh.
We deal in spoilers
do have
here.
a spoilers alert, but everybody dies. Actually, there's two people who don't die, and there's people in the pawn shop. But other than them, everybody dies. But you know, I actually like this movie. I'm not sure exactly why. It's pretty gratuitously violent for not a lot of reason, but in a way, the extreme violence is very graceful in how it happens, and you're just like, whoa, that just happened. So, you know, it was pretty good, in my opinion.
Well, as an early adopter of like J horror and K horror and stuff like that, I've been watching these two franchises for almost a couple of decades now. I remember getting like bootlegged versions of the Ju-on, the direct-to-video movies that only came out in Japan and that were never released in the U.S. And luckily, I live in South Texas where there are these great things called pulgas, and in pulgas you can buy basically any movie. It's really hilarious and kind of sad. And so coming to this, I also wasn't really expecting much. But I was delighted to revisit these two characters, these settings, and the atmosphere. And I figured it'll be just, at the very minimum, cheesy, dumb fun, and it'll be worthwhile. But there was actually, there were some pretty cool moments in it. There was some interesting acting, some interesting new characters. I kept waiting for the verses to happen, and it took a very long time for there to be versing, and then the versing was very short, and it went off in a direction I hadn't expected. But along the way, I really enjoyed it. I loved all the exorcism stuff was really great. I love that kind of thing.
Very slapstick, huh?
Yeah, there was some slapstick deaths, but the exorcism itself was cool, and then the way the death, we'll get into that. They were a little weird. I loved the professor, and we'll talk about how maybe some of the air is let out of this film once Morishige is kind of killed off. There are some things that I wasn't a big fan of. I mean, I like the male exorcist with his kind of dickish attitude, but his assistant was kind of like, what? Did they step out of it felt like an anime. They felt like anime characters.
Yeah.
I kind
of like that though.
It was cool, but there were points at which it was like it grated on me just a little bit. Like, can we get a little bit more serious? It's a freaking horror film. But overall, I ate some popcorn, watched the movie, and had a good time. I'm a completist, and I had been waiting for a long time to see this because it's only available on Shudder in the U.S. And so I just eventually I'll get Shudder eventually. And so I was happy to see it.
Yeah, I'm a humongous fan of, how can I put this, non-American movies. And by that I mean movies in the US, excepting of course the indie circuit, are going to be, they follow certain rules. You have a protagonist, that protagonist is probably going to be there through the end. You have a story set up, it's going to come out, whatever was set up is going to be paid off usually. But with a lot of foreign films, the rules are different. And I appreciate that. There's a lot of Indian movies I like for that reason, Chinese, Japanese movies that I like for that reason. And so, in a sense, I love that, and this movie had a lot of that. However, that having been said, I do wish they had a producer that was kind of reining them in the way an American producer might. Some of the characters could have been combined, and you mentioned the professor, Morishige?
Morishige, yeah.
Yeah, he had a really neat story set up that just disappeared. It was like, here's a story, here's a setup, and then it's gone. And then we had a lot of characters that were introduced as if something more was going to happen to them, and then, oh no, they're dead now, which, again, is part of a horror film. But at the same time, I would like to really care about a character before you viciously murder them in front of my eyes. It's what makes it a little bit more special. And of course, there's the versus part, which I feel like, I watched I won't say the originals, because a lot of these started very small and early on, but I watched some of the early of the Japanese of both of these two franchises, and I watched the American version. I distinctly remember The Ring. I don't remember The Grudge all that well, but I feel like there's such a legacy there that they didn't really tap it as well as they could have.
Yes,
and they didn't really push that envelope any further.
Yeah.
So you set up these two characters and then don't really get either of them having a whole bunch of that potential, established. And that's my big takeaway from this. I liked it overall, especially because it's so different from, like, if this was an American movie, the whole thing would have been a comedy.
If this was an American movie, one of those two teenagers would have been all over that professor.
Oh yeah, there would have been a romance in there somewhere.
Yeah, it would have been an inappropriate relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about a lot of foreign films, is they don't shoehorn in the romance. I'm going to get off on the sidetrack with other movies, but there's a lot of American movies that a romance didn't need to be thrown in there, and they threw it in there because it's expected in an American movie. And this one, it would not have had any place in this movie to have a romance, and they didn't shoehorn one in.
So for my part, I actually enjoyed this movie a lot, but as we record this and interact with y'all tonight, it's going to sound like I didn't like it a lot. I think it was a much better Ring movie than a Grudge movie.
Definitely.
Although it did make me want to go back and revisit the other films in both franchises a little bit. I also felt like that certain characters were interesting. I felt the tone of the movie was strange, which was very like almost like an anime or a B movie that would have been made in the States, because it was so over the top. And neither one of the franchises that it's taking from, they're more somber movies. So the fact that they went so cartoonish with it was a surprising choice, although maybe they were looking at stuff like Freddy vs. Jason and thinking that's how you make one of these movies. That being said, speaking of Freddy vs. Jason, the one thing that Freddy vs. Jason does absolutely deliver on, even though it has a lot of flaws as a movie, is when the two monsters go at it, it's really impressive. The fight part of this movie is the weakest part of the movie, and it should have been the best part of the movie. That being said, I did really like it. It's a bonkers movie. It's got some crazy stuff in it. It has a nice, weird atmosphere, and a lot of it is they make choices that you wouldn't see in an American film. And I also like it that it was a movie that's beholden to folklore, because I think everybody on this panel has a respect for folklore. And to that point, I would like to start where the movie starts with the movie actually has a setup scene where we have a woman coming in to check in on a tenant that is renting from her, and she finds her dead with a tape that ejects from her VHS player because
cord wrapped around.
Yeah, with a cord wrapped around it.
And the tape begins to play.
And the tape begins to play, which of course anybody who's seen one of the Ring movies, that equates death. That's a nice little stinger. It also, again, shows us that this movie is much more invested in the mythology of the Ring.
Well, it does get top billing.
Yeah.
It does. They know which monster was Unchop. But I actually said Unchop. I can't believe that. Complete accident, folks. It then segues to this professor, which to me was one of the more interesting characters in the movie, and he is unceremoniously killed off later on in the exorcism scene, which we will talk about. And in some ways, I think that was very brave, but I would like to take a little moment to talk about this character, because I thought he was interesting, and especially in the way that he represents a certain trope. An older professor is definitely a horror trope, especially in Western.
And one who is supposedly suspicious and skeptical, but at the same time, writing a book about the legend. And I really love that setup scene where you have all the students, and he's like listing these yokai, these different Japanese creatures.
They remind me of Candyman.
And they're all the students are falling asleep, or they're on their phones, or whatever. It's so hilarious.
So I want to jump in on that part for a second. From an American point of view, it is really cool to see all these yokai described and tying, because even though the Ring and the Grudge are both distinctly movie characters, they are built on a foundation of Japanese yokai.
Yeah.
But for the college kids in the audience listening to that speech, they've heard this before. It's like if you had a college professor in the U.S. suddenly saying, "Let me talk to you about Bigfoot for a while." I mean, it's a bit funny at first because my professor's talking about Bigfoot, but then it's like, okay, I've heard of Bigfoot. What's the big deal?
But Bigfoot doesn't come and kill you in 2 days. I would say it's more like Bloody Mary.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Right, but the difference is, the reason I say Bigfoot.
Because people would be like, Bigfoot, just to see Bigfoot.
True.
I don't know why if you say his name 3 times, like Beetlejuice.
Now I want to see Bigfoot versus Bloody Mary.
That would be good.
That's what I want.
No, the only reason I mentioned Bigfoot and not say a similar monster is because in Japanese culture, these yokais are as ubiquitous as Bigfoot is in U.S. culture.
Yeah.
So whereas Bloody Mary is something that little kids tell each other, Bigfoot is just something that everybody in America is like, oh yeah, I've heard of Bigfoot. Okay, fine, moving on. And that's kind of what the yokai is for Japan, is that they're obviously bloodier than a lot of our commonly, because we have also those bloody legends and folktales. It's just we don't focus on them as much in the U.S., which is something else I think that early scene with the woman finding the dead body is that most of the deaths in this movie are presented to be suicides, which is, putting it delicately, part of Japanese culture, to an extent that would be handled extremely differently in a U.S. movie, you know?
Oh yeah, well it was like within
Yeah.
the ring when they did see the movie, they usually were scared to death.
Yes.
Yes,
You're
they
like,
just
"Oh!"
like died of fright.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's, yeah, they would not be all about everybody letting themselves get killed. I think that's only recently that, Bird Box
Yeah.
did that, and it was kind of actually, it wasn't so much that people were killing themselves usually, but, well, no, they were, actually.
Yeah, well, there was also The Happening, but no one really talks about that.
You mean it
It's the
happened?
trees.
No, yeah, The Happening the trees made you want to kill yourself.
The trees that will pop,
But
will fall.
that professor himself, he was a neat character because he was a very modern character. He didn't feel like a tropish character for a lot of these kind of movies, especially other movies. Because there's how many? There's like almost 10 Ring movies and like 10 Grudge movies.
Yeah, it's an insane number, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't seem like a tropish character for one of those movies. He desperately wanted to see the ghost, and when he was told, you could die from this, he's like, I'm fine with that. And he's never explains why, but it's implicitly understood that because, he could finally see what he studied come true, kind of a thing, And that's neat.
I love the fact that he was completely okay about being killed by the evil spirit. Like, he would be like, well, at least it would make my life's work have meaning.
And it didn't seem suicidal.
Yeah, like he was almost manic
Dying
about
for
it.
science.
Yeah.
Dying for science, exactly.
It was like, I could, there's nothing wrong with dying 2 days. Like,
For,
all right.
for this reason. But he never explicitly said it, and he doesn't have to, but he had more story to tell.
Oh, yeah.
There was whether he saw the ghost.
Why is he okay with dying in 2 days? Just to see Sadako?
I wanted one of two things to happen. Either he
Sadako.
sees the ghost and dies, or he survives the whole movie and never got to see her. Either way would have been interesting.
That would have been fun.
But instead, he just, he's gone, moving on.
Yeah.
So,
And his head blew up. Anybody else
Oh, yeah, well, no,
comment on that?
the
It was
blow
like
against his head.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was
so
pancaked.
to explain, if you haven't seen this movie,
It was like Looney Tunes.
they don't show it it's on screen for less than 5 seconds, and he gets headbutted to the point that he's the only
By the
death.
first exorcist.
He's the only death that is killed by somebody else, because all the other ones she makes them kill themselves. He gets headbutted to the point that his face turns into putty, and he looks like Large Marge for a second from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I'm like, wait, what?
Did you freeze frame it?
No, they never once show the body again. I'm like, are they gonna? Nope, they're not even gonna mention it. They should move on.
So I want to talk about the violence in this movie, because to me, when I talk about the difference in the tone of this movie versus the franchises that it's based on, this is a movie with quite a bit of practical gore effects, like something we would expect in an American monster movie.
Right.
Versus, again, Japanese horror films, J-horror
All
is...
the fake hair in between the fingers.
Yeah.
That gave me nightmares.
Yeah, body horror.
J-horror is
Hair,
usually
like head
more...
hair, not body hair.
No,
Never-
body horror. Body horror.
Body hair.
That hair in the hands is a technique of body horror. It's something
Yeah.
that disgusts you, but it's part of your own body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
J-horror is
it's not
normally more
it's not your
somber.
own body.
Yeah, definitely.
You have somebody else's hair. It's like when it's your own hair.
Exactly.
No one wants to reach out and pick up a clump of someone else's fucking hair. It's horrible.
Exactly.
But you're right. J-horror is usually more somber, and in fact, I was half expecting this movie to either be funny like an American crossover would be, or to be as somber as the originals have been, and I felt like it was neither of those things.
Yeah. And that was part of the problem with it. You could see the attempts with the two college students, when the one of them sees the video and you have all that build up to it and it's the anticipation.
Poor Natsumi.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't want to watch it. She was like, no, let's not watch it.
Yes, and she's the one who ends up watching it, right?
Yeah.
That's always how that happens too.
That's exactly.
And
of course,
Yuri is all like, Yeah. Let me check my
But
phone right there. You
that's
go ahead and
always how
continue
it
watching
is.
the cursed
Don't we all
video
have
while I
that?
text my friend over here.
They never said who she was texting.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Don't we all have that one friend that always gets us into that, like,
Yes,
the shit? And
yes.
like, no, I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
I don't think we should go in there. And then, sure enough.
Yeah.
And all of that feels like the Ring. All of that feels like the Ring films, where it is you're building up towards something. It's somber. It's really well paced, and they bring it to the professor. And all of that, like Drew was saying, it does feel like a Ring film. But once we move to the professor takes them to the Exorcist, that's where all bets are off.
And then while we're on that with the professor, his role was twofold. One, he was a neat character. He was probably the most interesting character at the beginning of the film. But two, he was also kind of explaining it to the audience, like, hey, on the off chance you've never seen one of these movies, let me explain to you what the rules are.
Yes.
And he fully explains the rules of The Ring. And they even repeat those rules later. But they never really address the Grudge rules. The most you get is there's one scene in the high school where the girl's like, you go into that house, you're cursed, and people who've been in there died mysteriously. And that's all we get. There's no real definition in this movie of what the Grudge powers are. And I say the Grudge, I'm using shorthand, American shorthand, obviously.
Yeah.
But what the powers are, what the rules are, and in fact, this is my takeaway from it as well, is that it was basically two movies. You had a Grudge movie happening and a Ring movie happening, and it isn't till the very end they're like, hey, there's a haunted house over there, let's combine these two.
Yeah.
And why is the one girl who goes into the Grudge, or goes into the house, for the Grudge, why is she drawn to it? And I know they do that with Sarah Michelle Gellar in the American one, but why is she drawn to it? Just because her family moves in nearby?
I think they were hinting that she was psychic, because the only other one that had that effect was this little psychic girl. So maybe she was psychic too, and they just never really addressed it. I don't know.
So I want to take a moment, since we're talking about this.
Virus.
I want to talk about the Grudge part of this movie.
Well, before we get there though, with the Ring, because we were just talking about the professor, we should bring up how he describes
the meme virus?
Yeah, that it's like this virus of the mind that is contagious.
I think that's a translation issue. He is saying the word meme, but he's using it in a context that we aren't using it.
Yeah, he's using it in a sociological context.
He basically means there's not necessarily a real ghost, but because people believe that it's going to happen, it will happen to them.
So a lot of people don't realize that the word meme was coined by Richard Dawkins in the book The Selfish Gene, and all it means is a unit of cultural information. A unit of information in the same way that genes pass on biological characteristics, memes pass on cultural characteristics, or psychological ones.
And that's exactly what he's saying, but they never explained it in a way that an American audience would get.
Right, exactly. And also there's this kind of expectation, because this is a Japanese audience, that they will have seen some of the Japanese sequels that are based on the books themselves. I've read the trilogy, the original trilogy, and the second and third book are batshit crazy, and they're all about Spiral, and the last one I can't think of what it's called. They are all about how Sadako is a mimetic virus, and she's infecting humanity.
So that's literally something that they
and so it's less of a spiritual thing and more of there's a scientific explanation. They're really bizarre science fiction horror, and very little that comes across in most of the Hollywood versions, or even the Japanese versions.
Do kind of toy with that, with the idea that they are going to upload the video onto, first of all, it's burned onto DVD, and a possessed person uploads it onto the internet. And I think that's an intriguing idea that would have been better for a
whole other movie,
solo Ring movie, not something where they're having to take.
Yeah, and before
they never address it.
No, before we jump into, because I think it's important to talk about the Grudge. As far as that, uploading to the internet is concerned, that's where that where Keiso, the other exorcist, is his sidekick, says, her power works because it's a chain of things, one person after another person after another person. If it becomes a web, if you have thousands of people all at once seeing the video, she is not going to be able to keep up with that shit. That's basically what she's saying.
Did she say that?
But it was like seconds, and then it was glossed over.
I interpreted that to
I
be...
thought she said she was all about everybody dying because
Yeah.
like
Well,
she
I know,
was
but there was this. She literally says her power, her curse is like a thread. It goes from person to person to person, and she deals with them one at a time. But if it's everybody, she says it may be a way to stop her. Like literally, the sidekick says that it may be a way to stop her for this video to go out there. It may be our salvation.
But I thought, is that what that was? Okay.
Yes, that was.
See, I interpreted that scene as them saying our salvation is if we stop them, then that video going out won't even matter.
No,
that's what I interpreted that.
Yes,
as.
And I mean, I don't think any of us are going to go back and rewatch it. But if we were to, I promise you, I'm almost positive.
I would give this movie a second chance. I enjoyed it. Despite the fact that we're now picking it apart, but that's what we do.
It reminded me
That's part
of
of
like Cabin in the Woods when at the very end when they're trying to like maybe the world should just burn, and that's what I took it as. Like, and then she's like, well, time to die, and she's gonna go hang herself with a belt and. Womp womp. Nope.
Well, no, but I mean, I'm not talking about what the friend says. I'm talking about what the assistant says.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The friend is like, oh, I want everybody to die. The assistant of the exorcist. What's the girl's name? So his name is Keizo.
Her name is
it Tamao? Is it what it is?
Tamao.
Tamao. Yeah.
So I want to talk about the exorcists, but we're going to compartmentalize this. I want to talk about the Grudge part of this movie because this is nominally a crossover movie, although as we've all said, this movie is way more invested in the Ring mythology than it is the Grudge. Like they don't seem to really care that much about the Ring.
The Grudge.
It doesn't seem to really care that much about the Grudge. So we have a new family move next door to this haunted house, and then we see that the daughter is kind of drawn to the house, and then we have this scene where these children bully this one kid into going into the house. He sees the ghost of the son, and then then tricks the other kids to go and follow him into the house. And then they are all killed, including the kid that actually kind of helped out the ghost.
So many issues.
What do we make of this scene?
So my thing here is, you've already well established that the Ring ghost is killing people, so we need to establish that the Grudge ghost can't kill people, right? That's fine, I get that. They don't really explain why the one kid goes in. I'm guessing he lost a bet or something, so like you have to go do it now. Because they never really, other than the fact that bullies, they never really explain it. But he goes in, and within seconds, with a bag of rocks, which I'm assuming had to do with whatever bet he lost or whatever it was. But within seconds of him walking in, and he sees the ghost, and then he gets scared, opens his eyes, and the ghost is now 2 inches from his face. And I'm thinking, okay, he's dead. But in the next scene, he's opening the door and literally goading the bullies into following him. So I'm like,
I thought he made a deal with Toshio.
They never really explained that. So he's either possessed or made a deal, and making a deal doesn't even make sense because does that ghost even have that capability to make a deal with somebody?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, you've seen other films. That's what
there's no indication that he can. He's kind of like just an imp who does whatever he wants. Yeah. But I mean, I just assumed like if there was this horrible ghost in my face, I'd be like, dude, there are 3 assholes outside. Let me bring him inside. You kill him, and we're good, right? Because then Toshio doesn't kill him,
or
right?
he'd be possessed. One or the other.
Kayako who comes and yanks him into the ether or whatever.
But then that kid then immediately goes and hides with a rock as if he's going to go fight back. And I'm like, but you saw the ghost, so either you know the ghost is going to kill them, or you are not scared of the ghost for some reason, but scared of the bullies. What's going on? And he dies too.
There is some weird logic bending here. It's not working.
Well, maybe he doesn't believe that, like, even if he sees a ghost, that the ghost is going to kill him.
It was an inch from his face.
So,
it was going, or whatever.
You can't see it, of course. Those of you who are going to hear this on the internet later, but they're all making faces like.
And the cat noises. You can hear the cat noises.
Cat noises you can hear. Right. You out in the internet. So
I'm canceling.
Why? So they went as so far as to make a movie, which is The Ring versus The Grudge. why do you think the filmmakers were so disinterested in it?
See, but this is what I was saying about combining characters. Instead of having 2 college girls and 1 high school girl, if they had 1 college girl and she's friends with 1 high school girl, then it would have more naturally flown, and you could have just had,
Or make them both college girls, and one of the college girls lives next door to.
Yeah. Either way, it would have agreed. It just seems like, well, look, The Ring is a cultural icon in Japan. She's thrown out the first ball at baseball games. I mean, that's nuts to me. That's actually, Google it. That is actually a thing that has happened. And whereas The Grudge has been going on for years, but it's always second fiddle. So it makes sense that one gets top billing, but at the same time, if you're gonna have verses, give them both, at least similar to equal footing in the show.
I didn't feel like it necessarily needed to be a high school girl versus like the college, or have them both be in the same educational level. I also thought it was actually nice to have so many females in this, like in the cast. Having, I think, starting with the 2 girls, Natsumi and Yuri, is that I think the whole reason it's like the hero's quest because she feels that guilt because, Yuri lost Natsumi, and it's totally Yuri's fault, like totally. Yeah. And Natsumi even says like, yeah, this is your fault. So
it's a nice thing to hear before somebody dies.
Well, if she had just gotten cursed on her own, that's so much just like, okay, it's the ring. Maybe I think the fact that she kind of goes through that like process, that's like actually like the deepest storyline in the whole plot. It's like that it's like the only real relationship, and that like true friendship, and she feels terrible that, she's caused this.
I feel like the professor had the potential to also have a real, not relationship like you're saying, but also have a real connection with the other characters if he had stuck around for like 2 more scenes.
Yeah. Well, you didn't, like, why is he vested, especially in like Yuri? I mean, I guess, as your teacher, when you're a teacher, you always care about your students.
It didn't seem like he cared about her health. It was really the story.
He just really wanted to get like,
and a way to streamline this would have been, I understand why they did it, and it feels maybe a little more organic, even though it's messy this way. But like a more American way to structure it would have been to have, there's this professor, he's obsessed with the monsters or whatever. He then goes on, one of his students finds a tape, and he sets it all up. He gets his one of his students to watch it. He gets another one of his students to go inside the Grudge house. He wants to see these monsters. That would have made him like a really horrible person, but it would have been more like a streamlined way.
Well, I think that's more of like the Freddy versus Jason kind of way to do it, where they found a way to keep both creatures in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And for whatever, I'm not saying that movie is Casablanca or anything like that.
It was way better than it should have been.
But it did what it needed to do. And this movie is a fun movie, but I don't know if it necessarily delivers. So, I want to talk about the exorcism scene, because it seems like all of y'all were interested in that. David, if you could start like just kind of walking us through that.
Yeah, sure. So the professor, once he watches the film and he gets the phone call, it becomes real to him. Like, he knows that their time is close, and so he doesn't have any. They look through the different options of what to do in his book that you could do. Show the videotape to somebody else and so forth, but they realize that their time is short and they maybe don't want to involve other people, and also they suspect that the whole showing the video to somebody else is BS and you actually do die anyway. So he has apparently, in I guess the research for his book, made friends with all kinds of exorcists and so forth. So they go to this
The local exorcist.
The local exorcist. I'm
Well,
looking for what's her name?
the friendly neighborhood.
I don't think she's named.
Yeah, so
she's
she's like this really badass
The Shinto
Buddhist.
priestess.
She's a Shinto priestess. This really bad. She's got these 2 female assistants, right?
female?
Are they female or are they
I think
male?
they're male.
Okay,
No, they're both male.
they're male.
Well,
It's just
I didn't ask them the gender pronoun.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't. We
Yeah.
don't assume. But
They-
hold on a
they.
second. I want to, before you continue,
Yeah.
real quick. I want to say I was watching this with a friend of mine, and my friend immediately says "exorcist," and his mind went Catholic exorcist because we're used
Yeah.
to American movies.
Right.
And then when the Shinto priest showed up, he's like, "Oh, is that like a thing they do?" I said, "Yes, it is." And I even said, "You ever watch Sailor Moon?" That was literally Sailor Mars. One of her jobs was go do exorcisms.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So it's like it's a regular thing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
And so she takes a look at the tape and she's like, "Look, this is some whack shit. We need. I don't know even how I'm going to deal with this. This is like black demon bad stuff. But I'm going to try. I'm going to give it. In terms of assistance, clear my schedule. This is gonna be some heavy shit.
I love that line.
Some never-ending darkness.
Yes, never-ending darkness.
I love that line. Clear my schedule. Like,
And so they go down to the temple and they get all stuff set up and she's pouring Natsumi through this ritual where she's splashing water in her face
She's forcing.
and then she starts forcing her to drink water, more water than and it feels like
She's
some
like
kind of
choking
torture
and
scene.
she's like
So
throwing
it's
out
water
water.
torture.
And basically water torture. And what she's trying to do is she's trying to force Sadako to emerge,
Yeah, she
right?
slaps her
And she
around.
slaps her, and when she slaps her, Yudi's like, "Hey, why do we have to hit?" You're like,
And then-
"Bitch, you showed your friend this cursed videotape."
But then the exorcist walks over.
Slaps her, boom! Shut the
It's
fuck
pretty-
up,
yeah,
sit
it's
down.
pretty funny.
So it's great. It's a great scene. And then the exorcist gets, but basically it backfires.
Right, because anyone who interferes with
The curse.
the curse in the process of
So
the curse. Gets killed.
Natsumi starts like freaking out, and her eyes roll back in her head, and then boom, Sadako possesses the priestess, right? And at that point, mayhem ensues, and
that's when the
that's when the
face
professor jumps in to try to stop her from hurting the girls, and she headbutts this fucker and pancakes his face. Oh my god, it was the craziest scene ever, but it was like
the only death that's a murder and not a suicide.
right.
So, for me, this was the best scene in the movie, even though I wish the professor had lived longer. Like, the effects of the priests
Oh yeah, twisting their own
twisting
heads.
their
Oh
own
my
heads,
god.
which
I gotta-
pretzels
That's
is
so silly,
amazing.
though. So silly. Though.
It was silly, but it was impressive.
Yeah,
You keep
it was
saying that
impressive.
the only one that's not murder in the movie. It's not. I mean, because the little boy ghost is constantly murdering.
Well, no, I
The
meant
only one
from
that Sadako-
from the ring,
Oh,
from the
okay.
ring deaths. Yeah, because all the little boy ghost deaths are in the house anyway. So
Yeah, Toshio.
I don't think we can find the bodies.
He kills himself a bunch of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he actually probably racks up a bigger body count than I
I think so. I think this should have been Sadako versus Toshio because that little fucker kills a bunch of people
With like a smile.
with a smile, and like I love towards the end where he like pulls the head. Oh my god, that's so insane.
But back to the exorcism for a second. She is an amazing character, that priest, right?
Yes, she is.
She's amazing, and yet she fails, which happens. And as she's dying, she says, "Oh, I called. What's it, Kaizo?
Keizo.
Keizo.
Yeah.
I called Keizo already before I was. So in other words,
Left some money under the altar. Pay him with that. Boom.
yeah. So she already knew she was going to fail. And yet she wasn't acting like that. It's really weird that somebody called in their replacement before they actually failed yet. But my thing is, and you were saying earlier, it's good to have more female characters. I wish they just combined those two characters and we just had this badass older woman as the cool exorcist.
Yeah. Instead of having the
Instead of, Constantine Light.
Oh yeah.
Constantine
Or
Light.
having like their, it's like, hey, I'm like the sexy exorcist.
Sexorcist?
Yeah.
And like his
Yeah.
gestures. You
Yeah.
can't see this, those of you who are listening on the podcast,
Yeah.
but he does these like gestures, like I don't know, sketching characters in the air and then
Yeah.
Slashes.
slashes.
Very much feel like an anime.
Yes.
Yeah, he was
Which is
basically
fine.
Yeah. He
I
was
kept waiting for the
basically-
camera to like Death Note, the way the camera would be like zoom in. That would have been awesome. I would have been down for that.
He's the one, and we're because we got to keep moving along for time.
Yeah.
He's the one that comes up with the idea, seemingly at random, to have two ghoul, quote unquote, and I'm quoting, two ghouls fight each other.
Right.
So we jump.
Because he knows he can't. He knows his way. No way he can defeat them, and so he figures maybe there's a way for them to defeat each other. But it's so weird because he's like, let's get two ghouls. I'm not sure what the second ghoul can be, and they just happen to come across.
He's like, oh yeah, there's a
Grudge
haunted house here.
Oh yeah.
So at this point in the movie, we were actually at the versus part of the movie,
Right.
and most of the movie is over.
Well, they decide that you can't just say like, oh, they just happen to be in the verses for no reason. They decide that the only way that they can maybe save the girls is to occupy each of the demons to like literally
Fight over.
Fight each other
over the both of the girls.
Yeah.
Wait, but before the verses, I want to warn this guy for a quick second. They establish how powerful these ghosts are, and how this woman who seems to be an expert Shinto priest, who is enough to threaten the ring ghost, and then this guy just waves his fingers and he's able to overpower her. He's the only guy that can cut her hair. What's her name? The ring ghost hair? The girl?
Sadako.
He is the most powerful. So I mean,
but is it Shinto? Is he just psychic? What I mean?
maybe it's a combo. I mean, she's saying like she says it immediately, like as soon as she talks to the priestess talks to the professor that like, oh, I already went and called him. So if even in Catholic exorcisms, when it's somebody like the priest, they always like, oh, I called the cardinal, or oh, I called the bishop, I call the. Even if you have a spill on aisle 9 in a grocery store, it's going to be like, oh, I called my manager.
It's like, I've known people who've done exorcisms, and I've never known one of them that was like, well, I called somebody before the exorcism started. And it's just like...
Just in case.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Sorry. I don't think that... See, I would totally do that as someone would be like, hey, I might need backup. That seems...
Backup exorcist, yeah. Like you call backup if you're a cop, maybe if you're an exorcist.
Think about like the movie, The Exorcist. Like, there's not one priest, there's two.
Yeah, but this whole thing made me think of like Mob Psycho 101. I mean, it made me feel like the have you seen like anime Mob Psycho? Yeah, okay. Anyway.
From the creator of One Punch, that's all I know about it.
Yeah, it's really, really awesome. So there's like this one supposed exorcist who's like a complete fake, a fraud, and there's this young kid who's like a middle school student who is like actually gifted like with incredible magnificent powers, and he becomes like a student of the fake one, and the fake one like basically sends him off to do all the hard work, telling him, oh, this is an easy thing, you can go do this exorcism. It just made me feel it felt like that kind of an anime thing. It didn't feel like it was rooted in the way it really would have been. Like what you say, it would have made more sense for them to start with a younger one, and then he gets killed, and then the old Shinto priest comes along, and she's like, I got
that
this.
is what they do in the movie The Exorcist. They bring in the old,
That's right.
wiser priest.
Can we talk about the showdown now?
I think we should get to that.
I want to just say something really briefly before we go. So before we start in there. So in the previous films, there's been some things established about these two vengeful spirits, right? So Kayako, the Grudge ghost, she is what
That's the mom.
That's the mom, right?
Okay, I got that mixed up.
She's what the Japanese called an onryo, which is this kind of like vengeful spirit who, because of some tragedy, like clings to a place, whatever. And we see in the films that the spirits in this house have some interesting abilities to be able to like kill people and disappear their bodies, and also for the people that they're cursing to kind of for their cursing to go backwards in time, so that people in other time periods see the cursed people in the past. It's something that's called residual haunting. It's really obvious in the American version, but in the other ones as well, you'll have somebody wandering and they'll see a character that we haven't seen yet, and then later in the film we see that person and we understand that they're a victim in the future, but they're in the house in the past.
That did happen in this movie.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It did,
Yeah, okay.
And so, but none of that kind of those weird disappearing things, powers, and so forth that Kayako has are being used in this fight, which is like a 3-minute fight and not even really all that good of a fight. And then you think about Sadako's power. In the first place, Sadako is way more powerful than Kayako, like ridiculously more powerful. It's like a totally unfair fight at all. But Sadako, of course, her power is, in Japanese it's called ninja, and in English we say photography, or just the ability to psychically manipulate electronics, images, and stuff like that. Again, can you imagine a fight where she's using those abilities to manipulate, things around them and plunge them into other realities, and kind of like what happened in the American Ring 2, that kind of stuff. Their powers are like ripe for and a really visually captivating kind of fight scene, like towards the end of Spider-Man Away From Home, where he's being plunged into fake reality after fake reality after fake reality. That kind of thing. There's so much that could have happened with the fight between these two creatures. And what happens? They like slap each other with their hair.
Yeah, it was a Medusa hair fight.
Yeah.
Oh, that gave me such nightmares in that one scene in the shower when it's just Yuri like hanging out and like Natsumi's in the other room.
All the hair is
and his hair's like coming out all over the place and the ceiling. I'm like, oh my god, it reminds me every time I take a shower because I have long hair. It freaks me out. But I had such nightmares that Wednesday night, because every time like I would fall asleep, I would think there was something in between my fingers, and I'd be like, let go.
It's actually a big credit to this movie, for as corny as it is at times, that it actually manages to be kind of atmospheric and creepy.
Yeah, definitely.
And credit to the filmmakers. Although, going back to the topic of the battle, it's very deficient in that, as you said, it's wrapped up in about 3 minutes. It does have one very interesting idea, which is through the process of this fight, the two monsters are fused.
Right.
And I wanted to know what everybody thought about. Like, is that something you would have liked to see explore in like a sequel or something?
I wish that was explored a little bit more here. Maybe they don't have to
I just found out that there's an after credit scene, and I didn't even watch it.
Oh, I watched for the after credit scene.
So yeah, because they're merged. So just to explain to everybody how they merge, they realize that the original plan is not going to work. They are Sadako is clearly going to like crush the fuck out of Kayako, and is going to like kill the girls. So Teiko has created a backup plan. There's a well. Unfortunately, a well.
Of course, there's a well.
Yeah, Sadako cannot be happy about it. There's
the ring.
yeah. And there's a well, and he's like, if one of you is going to have to act like you're going to sacrifice yourself, or maybe you're going to
act like
you're going to have to sacrifice yourself. You're going to have to decide to sacrifice yourselves. And the minute they know that you're going to do that, they're going to come for you, and then they will follow you. And I'm going to trap them there. He's prepared some kind of seal with all kinds of like.
Which doesn't look very sturdy.
But I think it's more like the designs on it.
It's meant to be magical.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it looks like it's made with
so
like
weak.
wicker.
It was made out of wicker, and I was also like, dude, really?
Wicker.
Could you carve something out of stone? I know you didn't have much time, but
Those little zigzag paper things on there are considered to be really, really powerful in Shinto faith.
those are the
So
spells.
even though it looks really weak, I'm like, if this was a
characters
movie, nobody would
themselves,
buy it.
yeah. So that's what Yuri does. She throws her stuff in, and they come smashing into each other, and in this like weird like blobby kind of thing, they begin to merge, and they fall down on top of her, and then because at this point Teiko's died, and so Tamao tells the high school
Tamao being the psychic girl.
He gets, like,
tells
cut in half.
Shichuka, he gets cut in half. It's messed up.
Yeah, just
So Tamao tells Shichuka, the high school girl, you cover that shit up right now, and so she does, and she ties it down or whatever. I don't know whether it's because she doesn't know how to place it properly or whatever, but
or it's too powerful.
Yeah, but they get out, and they have merged into this creature that is apparently called Sadakaya.
Yeah, that isn't said in the movie, so I'm sure that's maybe something that's in the canon, or maybe in the maybe if there's a novelization. But the thing is that the end result. I mean, okay, look, Aliens versus Predator. They made a Predalien, which was alien with dreadlocks. But the thing is, you get elements of both. And in this one, the merged ghost, when they finally see it in the post credits and everything, is. Well, it's just the ring ghost, but now she has Natsumi's face, and that's about it.
She's a ring ghost, but she can go.
Oh yeah, she can make the noise now.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, freaked me out that was the noise.
She's also like kind of a contortionist now.
Yeah,
presumably,
Gives
she
credit
could do a
on her
little.
flexibility.
She can like go down the stairs backwards. It's
That's a new power, I guess. But yeah, real quick, that sound you were just making, that sound.
It's a death rattle, right?
Well, okay. when they hear it in the movie, one of the characters goes, "That voice," and I'm like, "That's a voice? It sounds like a Geiger counter." But apparently they recognized it as the voice of the ghost, so they knew what that was.
Yeah.
What did you think of the merged ghost?
I wish that they had spent some time exploring that, because it's because then the movie's kind of over, and as far as we know, everybody, as Jamie said, everybody dies.
I will say there's one that we don't know died.
Yes.
The little psychic girl. She never saw the Ring video, literally, and she never actually walked into the building. The other guy did. So, in theory, the ghost might have let her live, and you got a sequel.
So, all in all, I keep having to go back to I hate this, make this all about Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
Which is, again, not the banner of perfect cinema. It's got a lot of problems with it, but it does deliver on what it's supposed to do. That fight scene in that movie is spectacular. Like, whatever you think, and there's actually two fight scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
There's a fight where Freddy and Jason fight in the dream world, and there's a fight where Freddy and Jason fight in the real world. And they manage to give both characters with their varying abilities, their due. And I wish that kind of thought and care had gone into this.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a real missed opportunity. Even though it's a fun, crazy movie, I keep thinking, like, man, I wish they could, and a lot of it seems budgetary. Like, it just doesn't seem like y'all are talking about all these ideas, it doesn't seem like they have the money to really.
But I mean, even if what about okay, if Kayako is clearly unable to grapple with Sadako, she's doesn't have any power. Why doesn't Toshio jump in? I mean, I would have loved to see Toshio jump on Sadako's shoulders and start pulling her fucking head off. That would have been awesome. Yeah.
Obviously, she's more powerful than either one of them individually.
Yeah.
The two of them together. Let's see where that
Tag
goes.
team.
That's the thing.
Tag team.
But here's the thing, you're talking about budget. The earlier films in this franchise, of course, didn't have CGI. And in my view, they were better in the sense of the effects. I thought a lot of the hair looked really bad CGI, and I'm not faulting them for the bad special effects. I'm saying that they didn't, except for maybe where it's in the bag. They needed it in the bag. But except for that one scene, a lot of the hair could have been done cheaper and better if they either showed a little bit less of it and did it practical, or or didn't show it at all, kind of like they did with the video. You just kind of like see them reacting to it. Like if you saw the hair falling on her shoulders and she looks up and you don't quite see what she sees, but they cut away to the friend, that'd be kind of interesting too. But seeing the bad CG didn't really help out too much. And then the fact that the movies themselves were. Okay, so this is a big issue I had with these two things, is that I felt like it was a mediocre Grudge movie and a mediocre Ring movie, and they happened to meet at the end of the movie. They didn't add anything new to the franchise, nor did they go to the strengths of either franchise.
Yeah.
So, well, okay. I think that puts us in a good place. Let's do our final thoughts, and if we have endorsements, and then if we have time, I would like to see if anybody who is here in attendance had some thoughts on this movie that actually watched the movie. Again, starting with Jamie and then moving down to Kevin and wrapping back around to me, let's do final thoughts.
Well, I would recommend this movie if you're a fan of either The Ring or The Grudge, just because it is such a fun and ridiculous watch. It's, you're not going to come away feeling like mentally stimulated. I was really, I like to find some meaning in most film, but I didn't really find so much here. But I did like the fact that there was such a large female cast. You don't tend to see that in horror movies, where it was not just like a bunch of men saving one girl. It was basically one guy and one girl saving, trying to save a couple girls, and then they end up trying to save themselves, only to perish. But still, worthy effort. But it was pretty good. I like the suspense in some of the shots. I was on the edge of my seat and like, oh gosh, what's gonna happen? Like, oh no. And if it was a lousy movie, I wouldn't have felt that at all. And I think, it was definitely entertaining. And it was a lot of like those jaw-dropping, like, oh my God moments. It's not every day you see somebody like just cut in half for no reason. By Ghost. It's like, it's cut in half pretty bad. I don't know if he's gonna make it. But I would definitely give this a watch if you are into The Ring or The Grudge.
Yeah, so, overall, again, as a completist, I'm glad I saw it. It made me, as it made Drew, want to go back and rewatch some other films that are, superior. The movie reminded me of the things that I liked about it. One thing that we really didn't talk about was, like, the colossal disappointment that the actual video was. Because in the other films, it's been like this twisted, psychedelic, iteration of scenes that just, like, fuck you up and you can't sleep afterwards just thinking about the video you saw in the film. And this was just like a room and just like a thundering steps, and then suddenly Sadako's like it opens the door and like shows up, and you're like, really, that's it? That's it?
She just walks.
She just like walks and makes a lot of noise. They kept cutting away, and and people's eyes were like widening with fear, and I thought, oh my God, this is gonna fuck me out. I gotta get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drive to Dallas. Oh shit! And it was like a joke. So to me, that lack of effort in creating and crafting the haunted video kind of speaks to the lack of effort in the craftsmanship in the rest of the film as well. I'm glad I saw it, but in better hands and with a better screenwriter, I think that it could have been a lot more. Might be something they are they're rebooting The Grudge. There's going to be a new American Grudge coming out next year with some really, really top-notch actors that I'm really looking forward to it. It would really be fantastic if eventually we get Tamara, the American villain from The Ring and Grudge crossover. That I'd be down for that.
On the topic of that video there, it seems so little. I feel like if somebody had just put a clip of Eraserhead in there, she would have been like, the cursed video, because, there was nothing there. Here's the thing, though. For all my griping, even that last statement right there, I would still recommend the film. But for cultural reasons. Like, I feel like these films the series, both of them, so represent this aspect of Japanese culture, this yokai culture, and not just Japan. There's similar stories in Korea, similar stories in Korea, similar stories in China. But this movie, having both of them together, if you were just going to watch one film trying to get some of that feel, I feel it has a lot of that. That being said, there's other similar movies. I mentioned earlier, before we started recording this, that I like the film The Pulse, both the Japanese version and the American version, in that they both have that similar kind of that white-skinned ghost that just goes after you for almost no reason, and also, like The Ring, brings in technology a lot, but I found it to be a slightly better movie. But I still would recommend it in its own way,
For my part, I also would recommend this movie. It doesn't do either franchise justice, but its craziness kind of makes you ignore that, because it still actually manages to be creepy. It actually manages to be entertaining, and it clips by, like it's over before you even know it. Like it's not a movie that drags. So if you're a horror fan and you want something that's just like a slightly different flavor of something that you like already, which is like haunted house movies or ghost movies, you could do a lot worse. There's ingenuity in the film, just not necessarily in the places that you'd want for a crossover film. Like I said, it sounds like everybody else in this panel, it sounds like I didn't like it. I actually liked it quite a bit. And I'm glad that I watched it. And I would say, like, as an oddity, of course, you should watch it. It's on Shudder. It's very easy to get a hold of if you have Amazon Prime. So on that, I would like to do endorsements for the week, and then maybe before we close out, because this is a live podcast, see if anybody had any thoughts on the movie that's with us in attendance right now. So Jamie, did you have any endorsements this week?
My endorsement is for the gorgeous ladies of wrestling Glow season 3. Because I hope there's at least 2 more, because wow, that is such a good show. I just can't get enough of that show. It is excellent, great cast, great storyline, and you're left with not quite a cliffhanger, but there's so much more that they can do that you hope that Netflix will just, keep it going. So here's hoping. Oh, I'd also like to give a little shout out, actually, real quick, to a person who couldn't be here, who tried so hard, but was injured on the way here. Also, a special shout out to Kesley. We're thinking of you and hoping your ankle is, not too badly hurt.
Yeah, and thank you for coming to the live podcast. That meant a lot to us, and I hope you are okay. I think everybody feels that way.
Absolutely. So I've watched a lot of stuff as I've been trying to avoid deadlines, and I've been making publishers upset with me. But I watched Wu Assassins, which is this really great new Netflix thing. It's kind of like what Iron Fist should have been. It's a lot of fun with actual Asian Americans inheriting ancient powers and kicking the shit out of each other, out of like a lot of bad guys. And then also The Boys on Amazon Prime. If you haven't seen that yet, it's such a great twisted view of superheroes. There are some things that I don't like about it. The first episode is kind of problematic. I'm not a big fan of seeing women put in like really horrible situations.
Amen.
Yeah, so I definitely trigger alert. There is in the first episode sexual assault, but it has interesting repercussions throughout, and the woman is not robbed of her agency, and so that's great. And then the guy who does sexual assault by the end of the season is in a really, really bad situation himself, and so he gets his comeuppance, and it's complex and interesting, but very violent and very, it's definitely a superhero story for our time. Swamp Thing, although it's just one season, I finished watching it. Not the perfect Alan Moore, pure psychedelic craziness that I would have liked to see but a solid season of episodes that I wish that maybe, I don't know, would get revived in some movie. And then I was talking about a movie, Midsummer. If you haven't seen Midsummer, oh my God, you should see Midsummer. Jesus Christ, you should see Midsummer. And I saw this film, Under the Silver Lake, the sophomore effort of the guy who did It Follows.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a horror movie that I really love.
It was kind of, Under the Silver Lake is more Lynchian, though. Really, really weird, kind of like a modern kind of Mulholland Drive or something. It was really weird. Anyway, so that's what I've been watching. What about you, Kevin?
All right, so I'm new here, and I have some weird endorsements, I guess. First off, there's this new book collection out called Halloween Man, Super Deformed. I will freely admit that I am a new convert to Halloween Man, having only discovered this thing's been around for 18 years, in the past year, but I've actually quite really enjoyed it.
For our audience,
thank you. You're making me blush.
Now available on Comixology. But on the topic of The Ring versus The Grudge, there is a webcomic that I was telling other people about, and apparently I guess a lot of them hadn't heard of it. If you haven't, look up Irma, spelled E-R-M-A. Initially, even though it's based on The Ring, initially it's a joke a day, kind of a gag comic, but eventually it starts developing a story, and essentially the main character is this kindergartner whose mother is the ghost from The Ring. Not literally that ghost, but essentially the same ghost. And her dad is basically a Stephen King analog. So imagine American Stephen King moved to Japan, found the Ring ghost, they fell in love, and had a daughter. And yeah, that's the premise of this comedy web series.
That died. Well, I guess she. How old was she when she died?
Well, this version, she's like a 20-something.
Oh, okay.
So it's not literally the ring. It's not literally the Ring ghost, because basically in the current storyline of the web series, they're really delving into the whole yokai mythology. So it's not so much that she is literally the Ring ghost; it's that she is from that mold of yokai that is the white-skinned, long-haired ghost.
They're
Yes.
called yurei.
Yeah, Yurei? Yeah, so literally she is of that mold. So each member of her family is a different type of yokai. So it's not like they're specifically, the Ring or the Grudge, but that type of Japanese ghost.
Oh.
And the idea that one fell in love with a human and decided to raise a kid and have that kid go to normal kindergarten classes, it's neat. It's fun, it's silly. Two movies that I want to recommend. One is on Netflix, I believe, or is it Hulu? I think it's on Netflix. Both movies I'm suggesting are Chinese for no particular reason. One is The Wandering Earth, which is a weird sci-fi post-apocalyptic movie.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix, thank you. Basically, just imagine if you had, 2012, Day After Tomorrow, Armageddon, any of the California earthquake movies, and you put them all into one movie. Oh, and also Sunshine for some reason. And you put them all into one movie and had it be in China with Chinese values instead of American values. And it's interesting. It's way better than it should be, although it is all over the place. And then the other movie I want to recommend is for children. By the way, the Wandering Earth is it's a sci-fi disaster movie, so this is what it is. The other movie is for children, and it's called CJ7, and it's basically whenever I get a chance to show somebody a movie, I'm like, watch this movie. If you've ever heard of Shaolin Soccer, it's from the same director, and I don't really want to say more than that of what it's about, except that everyone who watches it cries, and it is freaking hilarious. So it has both of those all at once, and it's really good. And it's called CJ7, and everybody I've shown it to has fallen in love with it. It's just that, it is supremely weird, but I don't want to go into further detail.
So I have a very public endorsement of where we are at right now. I want to thank AnimeFest for having us out multiple times and hosting the podcast. These live podcasts have become kind of an annual thing. And they've had us do several panels, all of which we really enjoy. And I enjoy seeing people that we see every year come to these things. It's become a very meaningful thing in my life and something that I look forward to every year. So I am actually endorsing AnimeFest, which is where we are at right now. If we have time, I would like to briefly, I know we're running a little short, but did everybody who is here, did everybody watch the movie?
Yeah.
So half of it and all of it. Did anybody have everybody, you agree with this, disagree with this? Please stand up so we can.
You have to come over here to the mic.
Yes.
So we're inviting people from the audience to, just give their feedback, which I think is a really cool idea. You can't do that with a regular
Cannot do that with a regular podcast.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
So state your name, and I know you've been with us for a few of these, but what did you think about? State your name and what did you think about the movie?
I'm Dakota, and what I thought of the movie, it was campy like some Japanese horror movies are. It was kind of good for a crossover, bad for how the battle ended, of course. I believe that when they were spreading the videos, I believe, wasn't it established in one of the earlier films that if you made a copy of the video and then showed it to someone else within your family member, you were saved?
Yeah.
Well, then I'm thinking that with how you said it was going from one person to the next, it would just make it where she couldn't do anything because she couldn't keep up with how many copies, which I think you were right on. But yeah, like I said, I would recommend this movie for a watch just to complete the series like you. But it was just campy. It was funny.
Yeah.
I was laughing, but I love how he's like the hair fighting, and then the videotape is crushed. The kid gets pulled into the TV explodes. It's great.
Yes.
It's a joke movie to me, and I don't find it horror. It's just a joke.
All right. Let's get what might be an alternate.
Thank you so much, Dakota. And that's so right. Dakota brings up the point. Toshio got pulled into the TV. I totally forgot about that.
So, My name's Joe. We actually just watched probably half of this right before this panel. And honestly, like, I agree with the whole idea that it's campy. It's very. We kind of watched it like we were laughing most of the time. We didn't really like take it super seriously. Also, I am friends with the person who was mentioned earlier, Kesley, and like I missed most of this panel because I was with them in the
Is she
room.
okay?
She's okay. She's headed to urgent care right now. So she's doing okay. But yeah, we watched probably, I think we're 50 minutes in, and I kind of skipped through like watching the thing on like Netflix. Like, skip through, like look at the preview scene, like see what's going to happen, and like it just seems very like definitely. I think when you mentioned under budgeted, like just it was campy. It was good. It was a good movie though. Like I'm gonna finish it later, and it definitely was a good movie. I've actually never seen Grudge. I've seen The Ring, and it made sense. I don't know if you guys had mentioned this earlier, but I did find it interesting the difference between the American and the Japanese version of the 2 days versus 7 days.
Right, yeah.
All those differences, and I'm not sure if that's. I don't know. I wasn't here, so I noticed the difference between that.
It did not get discussed, but it is a good.
Yeah.
It is a good point.
Yeah, I mean, they stretch it. They stretch it to 7 days in the American remake because it allowed for that build up towards the. For them to do all the investigation and travel kind of far to and in Japan things are a lot closer to each other, and 2 days is enough. And there was a completely different character in the original. In Ringu, he was like a male reporter and stuff like that. So it took a different tack to discovering the background of Sadako. So the 7 days was really effective because it built up tension, and like every time the next day would like day 2, day 3, like it was really powerful. I mean, that's one of those remakes that is frankly like you can't say this very often about American remakes, but American remake of The Ring is better than the Japanese Ringu, definitely.
I would argue the Pulse as well.
Yes, that's true.
So I think we are being told to call it a night. But thank you again, AnimeFest. I hope we can come back and do this again next year. This is always such a joy. I thank you, Kevin, for joining us for the first time. Thank you, David. No problem. Thank you. Hopefully we can have you back on again sometime. Thank you, David, for coming all the way up here. And of course, thank you, Jamie.
Anytime.
Always. This is the Castle of Horror. We are the Castle of Horror. Find us anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Go to our Facebook group. Argue with us. We will totally engage. Thank you again. And once again, thank you, AnimeFest. Good night.